I would like to introduce our presenter for today, Mary Gaston. With over 25 years of experience, Mary is currently semi-retired. She works as a technical assistance specialist for South Carolina adult education and as a national trainer for Lynx. So with that, I would like to go ahead and hand it over to Mary.
Good afternoon. I'm here today representing Lynx, which is a leadership initiative of the U.S. Department of Education, the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education. I want to welcome you to Reboot Your Digital Strategy. Sometimes we all need a reboot, especially when faced with new and difficult challenges such as COVID-19. This workshop highlights some national initiatives, some resources and tools that adult educators can use to enhance their instruction anytime, but especially in times such as these. Now, I am going to go ahead and cut my camera off so you don't have to look at me the entire time. All right, the objectives for today's workshop are to be able to define digital literacy and why it's important, to think about and identify some of the challenges that we're facing right now, that our learners are facing right now. Then we want to be able to evaluate some of the initiatives, resources, and tools that we discussed today, and we'd really like for you to choose at least one that you can implement with your learners and then begin to draft a plan to implement your next steps. We're going to do an activity to kick this off. I am going to navigate first before Nicole gives you the link to go there, because I want to show you, if you're not familiar with Padlet, we're going to use that to introduce ourselves and to identify what we think is our biggest digital literacy challenge. Once you get the link, you will double click anywhere in the beach scene, or you will use the plus button in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. So if you'll watch, I'll demonstrate. I have double-clicked and a text box has opened. I'll put my name, and then you would put your position and your program, and then identify your biggest digital lit challenge at the present time. I want you to feel free to use some of the other tools that will help you embellish your post, or to have some fun, or just to explore. And once you're finished with your post, you can comment on others. To embellish your post, let me give you an idea what's available. You have an upload button. You could upload a document. You could upload a picture or a graphic. You could link to another site. You could search while you're working on your text. You could take a picture if you're on a device that has a camera. But then you have what I call a little sideways snowman right here, 3 more dots. I click on that, and you have a lot of other options here too that you may not want to use for this activity, but I wanted you to be aware of them. Voice, you can make a short voice recording that would exist within this text box, but I'll show you something else you can do. So look what I found. This is how I feel about today. This is me today. I am isolated, but I'm not alone, and that's thanks to all of you. I have friends. Now, once I have finished my post, I'm going to click outside of the box, and that's what you all will do. Then when you've finished yours, you can click on add comment on someone else's and comment on what they posted. So we'll take a few minutes to let you play with that. Nicole, if you'll go ahead and put the link in the chat box for them.
Yep, so I went ahead and put the link in there. Do you think you could show that slide again as well? Because there is also a QR code that you can use with your phone. Is that correct?
Is it showing for you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to navigate back to the Padlet and we'll see if we have some responses. Oh, yes. Look at them coming in. So I'm seeing some of the challenges. Being able to connect with students, lack of technology resources, lack of accessibility. Someone found the drawing tool. That's great.
That was me.
While people are posting, I'll tell you about another, some of the other features that are available. Of course, you can choose different backgrounds. I use the description up at the top to give instructions for what I want people to do. There's a feature where you can turn off the comment box if it's not appropriate for the group that you're working with. Oh, hello from Florida. I like that. And I love, Square, SpongeBob down here. But you can turn off the comment if you're not ready for your group to use that yet. I know sometimes we have to scaffold to get folks to the point where they're able to communicate and collaborate in a group. There is another feature where you can have the ability to screen a post before it shows up on the screen. So thank you to those of you that were willing to participate in this Padlet activity. And I'd like for you to think about how you could use this. I've heard some educators are using this as their central place of communication. So again, there's so much being shared right now that you can easily become overwhelmed. And it's important to choose just a few tools, especially in the beginning, maybe just one, so we don't overwhelm our students either. But you can see the advantage. You can use it as an announcement board, a communication board. You can actually link to instructional materials, make assignments. So I hope that's got the wheels turning for a lot of you. You've done a great job with this. All right, I am going to move back to the presentation, and I'll try to remember to check back in on this later so we can see who else has posted. Those of you that like that tool, the Padlet tool, I grabbed this slide from another, this is not a link slide, I grabbed this from another presentation that I do, and it has a link to tutorials, video tutorials by Padlet, because there's a lot of other options, a lot of very creative uses of it. And then over here on the right, I've just posted a couple of graphics of how you can set the screen up when you're designing your Padlet. I did mine more as a wall, but you can also stream like a back channel. You can do timelines. All right, also to frame today's webinar, I wanted to make sure that you had access to some important information, some resources, and I will link back out of the presentation for a minute. This memorandum came from the Office of Career, Technical, and Adult Education at the end of March. It was March 27th. There's been a lot of discussion across the country among adult educators about question 5, which I hope you can see on your screen. And that was about reporting hours for distance learning. Your state defines this policy for you, but I think it's good to know what opportunities are out there. The Octave office has never required states to report distance hours, but you do have that option. And there are 3 models that states are able to use. They can use one or more of them. One of them is the clock time model, which is what a lot of us are familiar with. That's where you use a software program that tracks time. Then there is also a teacher verification model. And these last two have been ones that have generated a lot of discussion over the last few weeks. The teacher verification model assigns a fixed number of hours per assignment. And then when a student engages in or completes the assignment, they're able to award that amount of attendance hours. Mastery model is similar, but it assigns hours based on mastery of skill, and the student would have to demonstrate mastery by successfully passing a test. So again, all three of these are opportunities that states can use to define policy, and there's flexibility now in updating assessment policies as well. Attendance hours become important when you want to build up hours toward post-testing, and also it affects some states' funding formulas as well. I'm going to go back to the slide and show you there has been an additional update on this memo, and that was on April 17th, and there's also a link to the NRS guidance on distance learning as well. Just wanted you to have those as references. I have been a learner over the last several weeks. Well, I've been a lifelong learner, but over the last several weeks, there's been an abundance of opportunity to move out of my comfort zone and learn what others are doing. And I am amazed, as always, by adult educators, their creativity, but also their generosity of spirit, their willingness to share. A lot of things, as I've listened to other educators share their experiences, a lot of themes have floated to the top. I wanted to share those to also frame today's webinar. We need to remember to be real. We sometimes set too high an expectation. I've watched adult educators work on a recorded lesson, and they want it to be perfect, and they'll re-record and re-record and re-record. Please don't do that. We stand up in front of students all the time and think on our feet, and we're not perfect, and we need to remember that when we're involved in distance ed. Actually, I think it's better for our students if they do see us make mistakes and learn from them. I think it creates a comfortable space for them where they might be more willing to take risks because they don't think they have to be perfect if we don't have to. I think you need to consider your workspace, whether or not you're going to use a camera or not. You wanna be aware of what's showing on your camera. I think it's important sometimes to connect face-to-face using the camera, but it does save bandwidth if you're not all using the camera all the time. Also, you need to think about background noise, and you need to think about the background noise coming from your learners. There's nothing wrong with having a session where you practice having students learn to use a camera and use the microphone, turning it on and turning it off, and even having those conversations about manners, you know, when meeting as a group. I think too, we need to remember when we're looking at some of these resources and tools that we need to make it about the learning objective. It's real easy to get excited about a tool. It looks like a lot of fun and might generate a lot of energy, but we need to ask ourselves, is that going to be the best tool, the best resource we can use to deliver that instruction? And I cannot stress this enough, chunk, chunk, chunk. And by that, I mean we need to break our instruction into digestible bites, just like we try to eat the elephant. Whether we take a longer lesson and make smaller lessons out of it, if we're recording videos for lessons, if we make them shorter. If we don't do that, I think we at least need to pause often and engage our learners. Have some kind of activity builder or exchange, or as simple as a chat about what's happening in the lesson. And we need to be a learner ourselves, but don't let ourselves become overwhelmed. It's so easy to do that right now because there's so many great things happening. All right, it's important to know what digital literacy is. Digital literacy is skills associated with using technology to enable users to find, evaluate, organize, create, and communicate information. Now that is close to what if you stop right there, that's close to what the definition was in the legislation, WIOA. They use the Institute of Museum and Library Services definition. But this, since then, there's been conversation about expanding the definition. This one adds in solving problems. You will hear me refer to Link's community of practice discussion groups often during this presentation. Several months back, there was a conversation about expanding the definition even more. And that would involve successfully and ethically using information and technology tools. So very rich definitions for digital literacy. And I think we can all agree that it's no longer something separate. It is actually part of literacy. All right, who's not online? Who in our country, American adults, is not online? The Pew Research Center did a study in 2013, and then they updated it in 2018. So just take a minute to reflect and make a guess about how many people you think are not, what percentage, not how many, but what percentage of American adults said they were not online in 2018. And if you guessed 10%, you would be right. It had not changed much from 2013. It stayed pretty steady. And you can see some of the other breakouts on the data as well. And if we think about the learners who do not have a high school credential, the percentage goes up even more. Almost a third of American adults without a high school credential. So when I think back to some of those challenges that people were sharing on the Padlet, that's part of the reason. It's going to be harder to engage our learners given situations like this. When those American adults were asked what their challenges were or what their barriers were to being online, some of the reasons they gave were access and affordability. So when we think about access to what? It can be access to service. It can be access to devices. It can be access to finding good, high quality, relevant content. And it can be finding access to training so we can get the skills to feel comfortable getting online and connecting. And when we think about access, we have to think about how we're going to communicate with our students. Some educators were already using some strategies and tools to communicate with students outside of the classroom. They had a head start. If they already had a strategy, they had a head start. It's going to be much harder if that wasn't already established. So if you didn't have that established, I would certainly make that a goal going forward when and if we get to face our students again, is to make that a part of our classroom. Here are some of the tools that I've heard other adult educators talk about over the last few weeks. WhatsApp, that was something that was new to me, but not to my children. But many of the adult educators said that their students were already using WhatsApp. There's been some great discussion around using it even for instruction, and we'll share some of those resources later in the presentation. Remind is something that was very popular in South Carolina for some time, so those teachers who already had that set up, the students were comfortable using it. And that was popular in our area because teachers did not always want to share their personal phone number, so it gave it a way to protect that information. Learning management systems we'll come back to later. We have some more discussion to share about that. Email, and then there's many others as well. Facebook groups, I wanted to point that one out because I've heard several educators say that's what they're using. Now, of course, I want to put a disclaimer in here. You have to, whoever your employer is, you want to make sure the tool that you're using and the methods that you're using are approved by them. But I've heard some adult educators say they've been using Facebook groups. You can create something their students were familiar with. You can put together a closed group so that individuals can only join by invitation. And that way, just because someone's in your group, it doesn't mean that they're your friend, doesn't mean that they're not your friend, but it doesn't mean that they're your Facebook friend. So communication, I think, was probably, if it wasn't already set up, that was probably one of the biggest challenges. Access to a service. Everyoneon.org is a national nonprofit that helps those who are challenged in getting access sometimes to overcome that obstacle. I am going to jump out of the presentation right here. I'm going to do a quick look at our Padlet, and I can see that it's filled in some more. I love it too. I think it's a great tool. It's a fun tool, especially with all the embellishments that you can do. Let's go ahead and close that menu out. This is everyoneon.org. I'm going to point out at the beginning that there's also a Spanish version, but it's very easy to navigate. You click Find Offers. And I should have looked up a Florida zip code, but I didn't. So I'm just going to put my zip code in here, which is Easley, South Carolina. So I put my zip code in and I click Find Internet and Computer Offers. And then a person would check any of these that apply to them. I am going to go ahead and click that I have children in the National School Lunch Program. And let's say that I participate in SNAP, the food stamp program. You can see that when I checked those, I have internet offers for my area. Now, these will vary across the country because of different providers. But right now, I have an AT&T offer for $10 a month, and that's for 150 gigabytes at least. No installation fee and no charge for a modem. If you see print in red, those are specials because of the pandemic. There are two other offers for my area, PCs for People and Spectrum Internet Assist. Also, I have two offers for devices. Now, these are refurbished, rebuilt devices, but a laptop for 160 and desktop for 110. It comes with customer support as well. If I were interested, I would click on Buy Now. Not so important right now, but it will be again in the future, digital literacy training locations for my area. If you do this, search in areas across the country, you're almost always going to see the library. Not so much the adult ed centers. This is one I worked for several years ago. If you want your adult ed center to show up as one of the training locations, you would want to contact, look at the bottom, contact us and ask them how to go about getting your center added as one of the options for training. Everyoneon.org. All right, back to the presentation. Northstar Digital Literacy. I absolutely love this tool. And I should have just stayed out because there's several websites. I'd rather work from the website and show you exactly how it looks than working from the slide. Northstar Digital Literacy is a program of Literacy Minnesota, but they, as happens so often, they share. And what I want to focus on is this part right here, take an assessment. So maybe we get the service and we get the device, but now we need to find out what we already know and what we need to work on so we can be more comfortable with access. This is available to anyone. So you could send the link to a student for them to take an assessment at no cost. I'm going to click on Take an Assessment, and you can see the richness of the assessments at the bottom. Every one of these is a separate assessment. I wish we had more time and I would demonstrate one of them for you, so I encourage you to go back and explore them yourself. They're narrated, they make it very simple, very clear cut, and at the end you get feedback on what skills you have and what skills need improvement. Go back to the top. I'll briefly mention there is a way to become a testing location. The advantage to being a testing location is that you can award Northstar credentials as students pass assessments. And there is a fee to that. It is not an outrageous fee. If that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to explore that as well. They also have some training modules that are typically available to the subscribers, but I think those have been opened up a little bit at the present time. Northstar Digital Literacy, a wonderful tool. So a student finds out what skills they have, what skills they need, and now they need some training. DigitalLearn.org is developed by the Public Library Association. And I wanted to show this from the website because I wanted you to see the richness of all the modules that they have. These range in length from 5 minutes up to 20-something minutes, but even connecting with others with Skype and Facebook and using mobile devices. They also have some of these modules in Spanish. You would go here to see what's available there. These are also downloadable as PDFs in case a person does not have access. I'm going to jump back into the presentation. Well, see, we're not all perfect. Doesn't that make you feel better? Okay. GCF Learn Free is developed by Goodwill Industries, and it is also available at no cost to our learners. They have modules that can be downloaded as well and accessed online. They include modules on job training, reading, academics, technology. All right, Nicole is going to put up a poll, and for the poll, what we've done is it's a way to reflect on what we've talked about. We've talked about communication tools, and that was a pretty big list, but you may have some others as well. Everyoneon.org, Northstar Digital Literacy, DigitalLearn.org, that's the one by the Public Library Association, and GCF Learn Free. Which one of those interests you the most that you want to go back and explore at a later date?
All right, so I went ahead and launched the poll, so we'll give it about 35 seconds to let everyone participate. Right, so people are still kind of going in there and voting. We have most everyone in already.
And it looks like Northstar Digital Literacy is the star of that section. But again, it depends on what your programs need or your learners need is.
Okay, it's been over a minute, so I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll and share the results with everyone.
Okay. And as those results are being shared, I want to transition us to the next section, which is ease of use. Going back to that study by Pew Research, you'll remember that 10% of American adults were not online. Another barrier they gave, another challenge, was ease of use. often called the hassle factor. So we need to think about that when working with our learners, what we can do to make their use easier. Nicole, are they able to see the screen again?
Yep, they can.
Okay.
Again.
Thank you. All right. There's a great website on accessibility and universal design that I wanted to mention. And when you have your copy of this handout, many of these graphics are linked for you. So if they're not linked, they'll have the URL where you can go and find out more. But I really did love this chart. This is just the top headings of the chart. But sometimes being more inclusive is a matter of being open to thinking about things that will include more learners. So when we're setting up our learning activities, our instruction, especially when we're thinking about distance ed, we want to be more inclusive. And I like the way this causes us to think. It recommends and it provides more specific guidelines. If you go to the website, these are columns and they have principles under each heading, and then they give specific examples. But it's a matter of thinking about ways to engage our students and making sure that we're doing that in more than one way. Are we encouraging student choice? Are we encouraging them to feel part of a community? The engagement piece has a lot to do with them being motivated and being able to persist. Then we want to think about multiple means of representation. When we're presenting information to students, we want to think about doing that in more than one way, not just talk at them, but to provide visual as well and multimedia as well to try to engage more and more. And then when we ask them to show us what they know, we want to allow them to have some choice in how they do it. Are we only asking them to submit things in writing? Can they do a video instead? Can they do a picture instead? So these are really good considerations to give, especially as we are teaching online more and more. Other accessibility considerations, I think we need to consider how our students are connecting, and that can help us present material in a way that matches that a little better. One of the things I learned about just recently is the closed captioning feature in Google Slides, and I hope it shows up on this platform. I'm going to click closed captioning, and hopefully it's not exactly what I'm saying, but it does come close, especially considering I have a very strong Southern accent. But hopefully the captions are showing up at the bottom. This does have limitations. I put the graphic on the slide to show you when you're in Google Slides and presenting, you have the menu bar. All you would do is click on closed captioning, and it allows you to set the size, and it allows you to decide where on the screen. It is limited in that when you're recording, the captions do not show up. But if you need closed captioning, you might want to consider when you record a lesson. Oh, and PowerPoint also has closed captioning. I wanted to mention that. But if you're going to record a lesson, you want it to have closed captioning, you can always, if it's 10 minutes or less, you can upload your recorded lesson to YouTube, and then they have the captioning available. But again, that's limited to 10-minute or less lessons. And we know that our lessons don't need to be over 10 minutes anyway. I think the most effective are 5 minutes or less. So I'm going to turn off the closed captioning unless someone needs it, and then you could chat that to us, and Nicole can tell me to turn it back on if I need to. Another consideration is fonts. Sans serif fonts, that means without the serif, that's simpler fonts, should be used. So those with visual discrimination issues, and some of the ones I can think of are Arial, Verdana, Roboto, and there are others, but you want to look at using simpler fonts. We heard from a presenter in one of the EdTech distance learning strategy sessions a couple of weeks ago talk about most of her learners are using smartphones, and in order to see slides on smartphones, they have to turn them so they're landscape, and So some might need to be coached on how to turn off the lock feature so that when they rotate their phone, the screen follows. And they also mentioned using a larger font. I think what I have on the screen right now is probably about 24, and she suggested 30 or higher. Also, if you use pictures, if they're using smartphones, you want to use fewer pictures. And you might want to consider if you're doing live instruction describing that graphic or having a caption for the graphic as well. And those are some other considerations. Templates can help if someone is using a screen reader, as can captions and descriptions of images. So just some considerations, and avoiding acronyms. Here's another slide I grabbed from a different presentation, but it just has some simple instructions for using that closed captioning if you want to from Google Slides. And I also put a link down here. If you're interested in taking your recorded lesson, that maybe you used your camera or iPad, or maybe you use Zoom or Screencastify to do a lesson, and you have a recording that's 10 minutes or less, this will show you how to upload that to YouTube. So then you could share it as a YouTube link, and the students would be able to use closed captioning. Bookshare is a site Benetech has, and it's a partnership between the U.S. Department of Ed and Benetech to be able to offer access to over 400,000 materials in customizable formats such as audio, digital braille, other customizable features. But to have a free membership to this library, an individual must have a documented disability. So that's another great resource. Bookshare for adults. All right, I told you at the beginning, you're going to see me talk a lot about the great resources that Links has. And where I found a really great discussion that might have been back in December was on the Integrating Technology group in the Community of Practice. This is linked to just the main page of Communities of Practice, but I wanted us to take a look at this conversation. So I am going to exit out. And that's where that link would take you. Jeffrey Woodland was invited to talk about learning management systems. And it focused on Google Classroom, but it also referenced others as well. And the discussion talked about the advantages to having a learning management system. So I am going, but while I'm here, let me go ahead and tell you, if you just want to be a consumer, you don't have to have an account to go and read through these rich discussions. But folks, I'm here to tell you, you should go right here and create an account. And when you do that, you're able to share. I mean, there are folks on there asking questions. There are others sharing answers and resources. So it's not only about feeling, I mean, you can go there and ask a question, and you can go there and share information. And like I said, adult educators are some of the most generous people in the world. Very rich discussions taking place there. So I'm going to jump back into the presentation. And here's some of the advantages of having a learning management system. It's something like a Google Classroom or Edmodo or Moodle or Canvas, but it's a central location. I have seen Edmodo used with a lower level group of students who were reading at the first, second, and third grade level. Their use of it was simpler than the higher level classes, but still it was a way to integrate digital literacy into their daily lives. It was a way for them to begin acquiring digital skills that would take them a long way if a crisis like this, God forbid, ever happens again. But not just a worldwide crisis, it can be a crisis in a student's life that causes them to stop out for a while. They still have a way to connect. So if you weren't using one of these learning management systems already, I certainly encourage you, when you get back face-to-face, or if you want to even try to get folks started from a distance, that's entirely possible. It also helps them bridge to a more robust platform that they might need when they transition to additional training or post-secondary. This is some information I gained from that discussion as well. Google Classroom is available at no cost to educators, and I was already aware that schools and nonprofits could get G Suite for Education at no cost. What I did not know is that individuals with a personal Google account can also use Google Classroom for free. So if you want more information about that, but that I learned, and several of my colleagues and I, we were all surprised by that, because we thought for some reason that was only available with the G Suite for Education and nonprofits. But if you want more information about that, there is a link at the bottom of the page. So that is another example of what you can learn by becoming a participant in what Links has to offer. This is how simple it is to create a class in Google Classroom. This is another slide I grabbed from a different presentation. It's as simple as going to classroom.google.com, pressing the plus button, and saying create a class. You choose a title, you choose a background for the board up here. It assigns your class a code, and you hit right there to expand the code out. Then you can have students go to classroom.google.com. They press the same add button, plus button, but they say join a class, and then they enter the code. There are some other considerations if you want them to be able to comment on the class, if you just want them to be able to consume information off of the class stream. But these are the features of the Google Classroom: stream, classwork, people, so you can see here, and grades. And here are some screenshots of other learning management systems that are available for free as well. I've used Edmodo for years, have actually even used it in teaching some graduate classes for adult educators in our state. All right, we are through another section. Let's reflect for a minute what we have covered. Universal design for learning, that's those considerations about being inclusive of all of our learners. Closed captioning, Bookshare, that's the partnership where you can get, our students can get a free membership if they have a documented disability. Links community of practice, you've seen several examples so far of how helpful that can be, and learning management systems. So Nicole will put the poll up, and we'd like to know which one interests you the most.
All right, so the poll is launched. In the meantime, Mary, we do have a couple of questions here and comments.
Okay.
So we have a question here. Does Google Classroom require students to register for a Google account?
They will need a Gmail account, yes.
Okay. Would Google Classroom work from a student's smartphone?
I think it does. I can check on that, but I do think there's an app for Google Classroom. I've used it from my iPad.
All right, and we have a comment here from David Rosen, and he just wanted to let everyone know that Northstar can now be administered entirely online.
Thank you, David. That is great to know. I had heard in one of the discussions that they were working on that. That's super.
Okay, and that's all I have for questions right now. Oh, one more quick thing. Somebody actually would like you to continue with the closed captioning.
Okay. All right. Forgive me for my Southern accent.
All right, so we'll just give it a few more seconds on this poll. We have another question here. Is Google Classroom live? Do you see each other like Zoom?
No. But you can connect it to Google Hangouts Meet.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results.
Okay.
Okay. The results are being.
So, go ahead. So learning management systems was 41% of you chose that one as the one you were the most interested in. I think and having a learning management system doesn't mean that you can't use other tools. They're actually easier to share because you've already got a way to share links, to share attachments. So it's not exclusive of using other resources as well. And it's a really great way to centralize things and build in those technology skills. Thank you. All right, relevance is our next section. So another one of the challenges that those adults who aren't online shared was thinking that there wasn't relevant content for them online. So one of our jobs, responsibilities is to help them find that relevant content, the relevant content that relates to their educational goals, but also to their personal lives as well. There's a publication by the American Institute of Research called Connected Teaching and Personalized Learning. You'll have a link to this later in the slide. That one of the comments out of that is much good content remains largely invisible to students. So creating a culture of sharing resources is really great. And again, not just about the academics that we're sharing, but finding out about their personal interest as well. Then encouraging them to share not just with their family and friends, but with their classmates, much like we do and have been doing in abundance over the last few weeks, is sharing resources with each other. Contributes to being a lifelong learner. The Links Learner Center, that is for our learners. There is also a Links Learning Portal we'll look at later, but this is the Learner Center. And what this does is it provides access to federally funded resources. It's academics, job skills, citizenship, government, finding adult ed programs, finding training in the area. And there's both English version and Spanish version, and I have the links at the bottom of the slide there for you as well. The Links Resource Collection is another great way to find relevant information. This does not require a user account, although you know I'm going to say you will benefit from having a user account. But these are peer-reviewed resources. They're, some of them very practical, instructional resources, some of them research resources, and it's very easy to search. Say, for example, you wanted to know about math and manufacturing. You could search for that, and you could narrow it down to instructional resources if you wanted to. Google Applied Digital Skills, there's been a partnership between COABE and Google over the last year, and they've gone to many of the states in our country to do boot camps. They've made that offer available to all states where you dig in and explore this curriculum. I want to applaud Google here because not all educational resources remember adult ed, but this one does. So when you go into the section for teachers, you can actually filter for the modules that are most applicable to our adult students. So there's different ways you can go about using it. You can, students can access it on their own, or teachers can create a classroom within this and make assignments and keep up with progress, or you can refer students to specific modules. But they're video-based, very short videos, and they're project-based, related to real-life problems that they solve. And while they're solving the problems, they're acquiring very important digital skills. They might learn how to use cloud-based storage. They might learn how to use a Google Doc and use it to collaborate. So I encourage you to explore that if you haven't been able to attend a boot camp or if you haven't seen it before. Rich resource. Crowd Ed Learning is a nonprofit out of Chicago. Jeff Kumas is the president, and what they are a lot about crowdsourcing, gaining input from the field about resources, open educational resources, free and open educational resources that have been recommended by those in the field. This is a screenshot of their skill directory, and you can see that each one of these, health literacy, digital literacy, writing, math, each one of those has, I will say, kind of houses a lot of the free and open educational resources available that are relevant to adult education. So I encourage you to explore that. And a project they are working on at the present time is called Skill Blocks. Skill Blocks is a way to generate a learning plan for a student that is aligned to the college and career ready standards, and a lot of them are already aligned to TABE skills as well. So what has happened is alignments have been built from some of the open educational resources to the college and career ready standards, so a teacher could log in and or create a real quick account, can log in. Let me just jump out. I know we're limited on time, but might be better if I show you this. This is the CrowdEd website. Where we were before was right here, Explore. Skill directory was what the screenshot was on the previous slide. I want to point out teacher tools. This is great. Click right here. This is in response to COVID as well. You can see it outlines a lot of different meeting tools, messaging tools, content resources, and I'll stop there, but you can see just an incredible amount of resources. So that is under Explore, under Teacher Tools. Skill Blocks has just launched. It is a beta version. It's only available for math right now, but they are certainly encouraging people to use it so they can continue to tweak it and build it, and it will continue to be built out to include the other subject areas as well. But this is a screenshot of one of the learning plans. And the idea is that once a teacher built this is level D multi-step equations, that they could share this code with a student who could log in and retrieve this, or they could print it as a PDF. And so the teacher has pulled from the library all these related lessons. And so if the student has the digital copy, all it is a point and click for them to go through the exercises. I want to show you, they've done several webinars, but they have broken those up into those chunks, those digestible bits here on a YouTube playlist. So if that has interest for you, I encourage you to explore those videos, and you can go ahead and be using these in the next week. Great way to share digital resources with your students. Other sources for relevant content, I'm sure you have many as well, but some of these are actually embedded in some of the sources we've looked at already in this section. And Nicole, if you can throw up the next poll. These are the resources we've considered in this relevant section. We've got the Links Learner Center, we've got the Links Resource Collection, Google Applied Digital Skills, CrowdEd Learning, and then the Skill Blocks, which is also a part of CrowdEd Learning, but a very specific tool that they're working on at the present time.
Okay, I went ahead and launched the poll, so we'll give them a minute. In the meantime, I did want to mention that FLC is actually working with CrowdEd Learning to develop an app to source and share Khan Academy videos aligned with the GED math test. So just keep an eye out for that. It should be on our website at some point during the summer.
That's great.
We also have a comment here that TED-Ed also has lessons to share and modify.
Great point, yes. TED-Ed lessons.
Okay, so we've let it go about a minute. So for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and close and share this poll for everyone.
All right, thank you. You can see skill blocks, crowd-ed learning, and Google Applied Digital Skills. There's a widespread there. That's great. All right, I don't believe we're going to have time to do the quiz is, but oops, see, we're not perfect. But if you have the link available, Nicole, if you would put that into the chat box, that is a link where you could go back and take a look at quizzes. This is what I call an activity builder.
Mary, your screen is actually not showing right now. If you could just go to the sharing tab and click show screen. It says it's, there we go.
Okay. I might have gotten click happy. I'm on a learning curve too. I'm a Zoom user most of the time, so I appreciate Nicole has helped a lot. Like I said, we're all having to move out of our comfort zone a little bit. So Nicole, if you're able, this is something they could do as a homework assignment, because I don't think we're going to have time for them to do it during the activity.
Sure.
And we can get that. I'm sorry.
Sure, I'll share the link to everyone now.
Okay. And you can come back to that later. It is fun to do it live, but it's also important to know that you can do some of these activity builders as homework assignments as well. But I had put together a short 5-question quiz about the content, just as an example of how you can pause the instruction and engage, make sure people are, I know my mind wanders, but if I know I'm going to be called on to chat about something or engage in an activity, and that can be from something like Quiz-Is, Kahoot. I love Google Forms, and Google Forms has a great way of making things a quiz now, where it scores itself and gives immediate feedback to learners. Goose Chase is a lot of fun. It's an online scavenger hunt, and students, again, it can be live, or and this probably more appropriate for distance learning to do it as an assignment. And students respond with a video, photograph, or with text. A lot of fun. A Quizlet, of course, a lot of you are familiar with. That's the flashcard, digital flashcard. Has a lot of games associated with it as well. And Google Slides Q&A is a lot like the closed captioning. It is a feature, I think the closed captioning, there it goes. It had gotten turned off as well. I apologize to the person who wanted the closed captioning. Just noticed that. Google Slides is another, Q&A is another feature on that menu bar where it throws a link up that students can navigate to and ask questions. It's kind of like a back channel. And then students can vote upvote or downvote other people's questions, so it gets the most important question to the top of the presenter screen. And of course, we did Padlet Edpuzzle. I hope I have time to show you that as well. Here's a slide I grabbed from another presentation that talks about Google Forms, but also gives the instructions for making it into a quiz. You go to settings and you do the quiz selection. All right, confidence. Up until now, we've been talking about barriers that our adult learners suggested as being challenges for them being online. But I think we need to consider our own confidence as well. And the more we gain that confidence is to move out of that comfort zone and practice and be forgiving of ourselves, but also to be lifelong learners. The Links Learning Portal is a great opportunity for us to grow. It has more than 30 self-paced, no-cost courses that you do, like it says, at your own pace. They do offer certificates of completion. And a lot of these courses will have you work within the discussion groups as well, but I encourage you to check those out. The states can work with links to offer facilitated courses. Oh, remember. You do have to have the user account for links in order to access the learning portal. Tech Tips blog, they have done a phenomenal job also responding to COVID-19. That's EdTech Center at World Ed. I am going to jump out of the, and when I jump out, you're going to lose the closed captioning. I apologize. But Tech Tips blog is useful anytime. I mean, they have teachers sharing ideas and lessons and strategies for integrating technology. But I did want to highlight the distance learning help. This is like finding gold at the end of the rainbow. And David, I know you're on, so I wanted to make sure that I had already planned to highlight the work that you guys have done on the Integrating Technology group. But you can see this page refers folks to the community of practice, especially the Integrating Technology group. And it talks about the distance learning strategy sessions that are right here. You can find the ones that have already happened that have been recorded. And right here, you can register for the ones that are coming up. I love this document right here, Ready, Set, Go, the steps to rapidly start distance learning. I'm not going to go over this whole page because I think I can share enough that it will cause you to go back and check it out again. This is a document that I think is phenomenal. This group, David, I believe you're the one who first started this resource list. It is a collaborative document from those who have been participating in the Integrating Technology discussion group on links. So I encourage you to check that out. It is phenomenal. It comes from practitioners, things that they're using, ideas that they have for using tools that they've used in the past. Okay, I will stop there. There's more, and it's changing all the time. So be sure you check this out. This is edtech at worlded.org and the distance learning help right here. One of the videos that EdTech did recently, one of the strategy sharing sessions featured Ashley Winkle. She had been a part of the Integrating Technology discussion a couple of years ago, sharing the work she does with HyperDocs. But she also did one of the lightning rounds on those Friday afternoon strategy sessions. And I talked to her afterwards and asked her, did she mind if I pointed people toward her coronavirus remote lesson? I think she did a really beautiful job on that. And she said, not at all. And then I could share her email address and also her work right here. It's a collection of resources specifically for adult educators and developing HyperDocs. And a HyperDoc is more than just a document full of links for students to follow. And I encourage you to explore her resources. She does a great job of explaining the difference in a list of links versus a HyperDoc. But I will jump out of the presentation for a minute and show you quickly this. She used Wakelet, which is a great way of organizing resources for a lesson. She used that tool to develop this HyperDoc. Training tips related to coronavirus. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. If that makes you dizzy, look away. This is where she got a lot of the content, a website called Share My Lessons. So some of the PDFs and other content that she uses in the lesson came from there. And she begins with a Google Doc called KWL, What Do I Know? What Do I Want to Know? And then she directs students back here at the end to complete that. So there's some reading that a student does. And then I really wanted to show you how she uses Edpuzzle. So the next step for students would be to watch this video, but it's not just the video. She has used Edpuzzle to divide the video up and insert questions. So it's very different than sending a student to watch a 10-minute video, but send them to watch the video where they have to interact with it along the way. So a real quick view of how that looks. Trying to move one of my bars. All right, I am in Edpuzzle right now, and this is her Edpuzzle video. And over here on the right, these are all the time points in the video where she has inserted questions. You can also insert voiceover at the same time. But for those of us that may not have time right now to learn another tool, I wanted to point out that once you have an account with Edpuzzle, you can copy one that someone has already done, and then you can edit it if you want to do different questions. So wanted to point that out before I show you what it looks like to the student. So I'm going to scroll down, and I have this run forward to 20 seconds, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me for 19 seconds till the question pops up, and you can see the quality of the video too.
Tennis ball with all these spikes sticking out of it. And depending on the type of spike, it allows that virus to attach to certain places. So some viruses, they have the spike that attaches to your nose. So basically you just get a common cold. But the SARS virus and this new virus that we're talking about has the spike that allows it to attach to the cells in your lung.
All right, so that's at 39, and you can see over on the right here the question pops up. It's a multiple choice question. The student has to interact. If their mind was wandering, they can go back and rewatch. But once they make a choice, they submit it, and then the teacher is able to see how the student did working their way through the video as well. So a great tool, different ways to go about using it, but the nice thing is you don't have to be the one to always make the video. Some do. I've got a link to one on the next screen that shows you one of the teachers that likes to make her own videos, but she still uses Edpuzzle to put those pauses in there. So really great tool. I'm going to exit out of there and go back to the presentation. So I encourage you to check out Ashley Winkle, very creative lady and very willing to share. And here's a slide I grabbed from one of my other presentations about making video interactive. There's a how-to. This is another one of the presenters from one of the Friday afternoon sessions. And she teaches ESL. She's one who I believe, if I remember right, has also been using WhatsApp to do a lot of her instruction. But here she does her own cooking. She cooks eggs in the morning and then stops. She's building the language and the vocabulary and then asking them what they're having for breakfast as well. And she used Wakelet to organize her lessons, so you can check that out too. Very creative. This to me is, I grabbed this out of something I'm doing for South Carolina, but I've tried to collect a lot of what I think are just phenomenal resources. Some we've already talked about, but I wanted to put them all on one page. Best of the best, I think, although I probably have left something out, and I apologize if I did. This is Google's Teach from Home. It, of course, is going to feature Google Tools. We've talked about the EdTech Center at World Ed. This takes you directly to that page with all of those resources. These are the session recordings from the webinars that I've referenced and shared some of the featured lessons. Links Community of Practice, Integrating Technology Group. Make sure you become a part of that, make it even richer. David Rosen, who's on the webinar today, is a moderator for that, if I'm not mistaken. And Community of Practice Resources for Transitioning. This is the document that he started, and it has gotten richer and richer. I think it's updated on a regular basis. This is a great resource too, remote learning with smartphones. So if you know all of your students are using smartphones, some great strategies and tools from practitioners. CrowdEd's learning teacher tools, we took a quick look at that. This one, Amazing Educational Resources, I think it's about 15 pages long, but it not only has some of the free and open educational resources, but as they get information about the ones you normally have to pay for, they're adding those to the list as well with information about how long they will be available. Getting trigger happy. All right, we're at the poll for confidence resources, and the ones that we've gone over to reflect in this session are Links Online Courses and Learning Portal, Tech Tips Blog, HyperDocs and Edpuzzle, and then that page that I added at the end, Excellent Resources to Explore. So if you could take a moment to reflect on those and choose your favorite.
I opened up the poll. I do want to mention that we've had some people that are having some difficulty with polls. If you, it is potentially possible that if you have a firewall in place, that could be blocking this poll from coming up. So please double check that. And if you are in a correction setting, it may not work. But thank you for those of you who are participating.
And those of you who wanted me to use the closed captioning, you can tell I'm out of my comfort zone. That's a new tool for me. So going in and out of the presentation, you'll notice that I don't always remember to turn them back on, and I apologize. We all just keep trying to get better.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close and share this poll with everyone.
Okay. Again, a big spread around those resources. Doing these polls, I think we're sharing so many things. It's a great way to reflect back and help us identify that focus we talked about at the beginning so we're not overwhelmed. So remembering which selections you made might help you narrow down where you want to go from here. It would not be a links presentation without building on the existing research. These are some research briefs. The word brief meaning that they've taken what is most easily transferable to our practice, those easily digestible bites of the best research. They address issues such as student motivation, student voice, persistence, cognitive skills, as well as those non-cognitive skills that we often refer to as grit. And it also talks about that access issue in future ready learning, about how to overcome that digital divide. The links to each of these is on the next slide. Plus I also added the link to the one we referred to earlier by the American Institute of Research, Connected Teaching and Personalized Learning. All right, we've approached the end, and what I would like for you to do is consider all the resources that we've shared with you today. And if in the question box, if you want to, share your best takeaway from today's session. For yourself, we'd like for you to begin an implementation plan. Which resource are you going to use? Who are you going to use it with? When and how? Defining those things now will make it a lot more likely, just like we talk about goals with their students, will make it a lot more likely that it will happen. And any final thoughts and questions, of course, you can add to the question box. And for those of you who are getting ready to sign off, I did want to point out that the last slide does have my contact information as well as the address to the link site as well. And feel free to contact me if you have questions or have suggestions for us to add if we were to do this again.
Thank you so much, Mary. We don't have any questions. We're getting a lot of comments on what their favorite parts were. A lot of people like the Edpuzzle, Google Sites, Let's see, learning management systems, and some others here as well. All right, so it looks like we're done with questions. If anyone has any questions, you could always email Mary. I would like to thank Mary again and Links for providing Mary to do this session for us today. I'd also like to thank the Florida Department of Education who support us and make this possible as well. I will be sending out a survey tomorrow or later today. That'll include the presentation, the PowerPoint, and a recording of the session, so you can watch it and share it with your colleagues. Please take a few minutes after when I send you the survey to fill it out. Your feedback is really important to us, and we use it to make sure that we have high quality sessions for you guys. And with that, I'd like to thank you all and say have a great rest of your day.
Yes. Be safe, be well.